Here is my recap on Dexter Season 8, Episode 3, entitled, What's Eating Dexter Morgan? All right, let's talk about each individual character in this episode. I'll talk about the little stuff, and we'll work our way up to the big reveal at the end of this episode where Debra almost destroys everything for everybody. She does something pretty drastic when she runs into the police department screaming at the top of her lungs, and we'll talk about what that is. The very opening scene of this episode is Dexter sleeping, and he is awakened by his son saying, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." And so he wakes up kind of nervous, and he, in his, asleep kind of mode, he gets up, follows out to where his son is calling for him and sees red stuff all over the kitchen floor. And Dexter's really nervous, and he looks up, and his son is eating a bunch of red popsicles. Kind of a humorous, anxiety-inducing moment at the beginning of the episode, but Dexter realizes everything is okay and wishes life could be that simple as a stomachache. All right, at the beginning of this episode, we have Debra, who is actually arrested for drunk driving. And we have Quinn, who has to go pick her up in the middle of the night and doesn't tell his girlfriend, which is Batista's sister. Later on, she actually finds out about this, Batista's sister does, and gets really mad because he can't stop thinking about Debra, helping Debra, and it's really beginning to tick her off. So we have that going on. We also have Quinn, who's trying to get into that detective position, and Batista is trying to help him get there. Matthews, the head of the department, doesn't want him in that position. Batista thinks he is the best person for the job and is determined to help him get there. So he's helping him study for the examination. Debra does get arrested for drunk driving, and when Quinn gets there, he bails her out and then sends her off to her job with Elway, and on the way there makes her eat some mints so that she doesn't smell like alcohol, and gets really kind of upset with her for having to do this in the first place. And she goes, "Do you know how many times I had to take you in reeking of alcohol?" He said, "Yeah, but I had a reason. I was actually dumped," not realizing why she's in this drunken stupor to begin with. He gets there, and he drops her off, and Elway is there with her, and they're helping this woman investigate her husband. She thinks her husband is cheating on her. They find out later in the episode that he is, and she denies it, even seeing all the video proof. And that's when Elway tells Debra that some people just want to live in denial. So we also at the beginning of this episode where Dexter is trailing off of the previous episode where the guy was on the hook, who he thought was the brain surgeon. Well, he gets called to the crime scene. And when they get there, the guy is no longer on the hook. He's actually been pulled off. He's in the cabin, and there was a gun put in his mouth, and it was shot off, so that there could be no one could see the brain part that was taken out that Dexter saw in the previous episode. The police department takes this to believe that this is the brain surgeon, and they think the brain surgeon committed suicide, so they're closing the case on it, leaving Dexter free to go after the guy on his own with Vogel. While he's there, Vogel shows up because Vogel was at home and actually got a text from somebody saying, "Go outside, there's a gift for you." And she goes out there and finds a his and hers box with some brain scoops in them. She actually brings us to Dexter and shows him, and that leads Dexter to believe that both of them are being watched. And so that leads Dexter on to looking for the guy who is the brain surgeon. And Vogel is convinced it's somebody from her past. And so the first guy there at the cabin was the first guy that they were looking at. Now she's got guy number 2, who is this guy who sells exercise equipment at the mall. Dexter goes and checks this guy out thoroughly and finds out he's actually a cannibal, and ends up getting him on his table in the very last scene of this episode, and he raises his knife to kill the guy, and they have some dialogue, and it's kind of the point of the whole episode is that Dexter says, you are a person of a different breed. You eat people. You destroy them that way. I destroy people another way. I destroy their entire lives because of who I am, and ends up getting rid of the guy, knowing he's not the brain surgeon because the brain surgeon is not eating people. He is preserving them and taking their brains and leaving the body. So they know he's not the brain surgeon, but he is a killer and somebody that Vogel had helped in the past. Now, during this episode, we have Dexter trying to get Vogel to look at Debra she doesn't want to do that. She wants to keep it strictly Dexter. There's a part in this episode where Debra is just not doing well and agrees to have dinner with Dexter. She's really beating up herself. She's now a drunk, and Dexter says, I want to show you something. And he points to a guy at a table off to the side who's there with his family and says, look at this. Look at this guy with his family. I want to show you something. And he pulls out his phone and shows her a video of the previous season where she had saved a guy at this cafe, and that was that guy in that family. And he's like, look, you're a good person. You saved his life, and now his family gets to have him there because of your heroics. And this kind of resonates with her throughout the rest of the episode. We also have Debra, who gets into a drunken stupor and walks into the police department towards the end of the episode and actually walks in and says, I killed LaGuerta. Now, luckily, nobody really heard her except Quinn, so Quinn quickly takes her because he thinks it's nonsense, runs her into an interrogation room and calls Dexter. Dexter is with Vogel at the time, and they agree to go down there to try and get her, and they walk in, and, she's acting crazy, and so Dexter takes the M99 stuff that he uses to subdue his victims and does subdue her, and they walk out of there say that Debra passed out, and he's going to take her home and take care of her. Thanks, Quinn, for looking after her. And that's when Vogel agrees to start helping him with Debra as well. So they almost got caught for killing LaGuerta in this episode. All right, so we're going to see where that leads in episode 3. We will see you on the next recap.